let me introduce not one, but two speakers we have for our first speech today, architect QHAWARIZMI NORHISHAM and architect YASMIN ABDUL RAHMAN. Let me give a short introduction of architects. So architect Kawa is the principal of QHAWARIZMI Architect. He's obsessed with stimulating the paradoxical state of intervening layer of scenarios with the social psyche. He resorts to irony over honesty in architectural creations, always imagining the twisted, unintended, and the unexpected. As associate architect of QHAWARIZMI Architect, architect Yasmin's love for humanitarian values have always reflected in her work as well. She gravitates towards discussing crucial global topics such as food sufficiency, social mobility, and ecosystem sustainability. Together, QHAWARIZMI Architects was born out of a passion to transform people's lives by designing incredible spaces for them to live and work in. They are passionate about creating public spaces in important spots across the city. So let us give them a big round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here on stage in front of a live audience. So, just like any other Malaysian, the subject of food is a huge part of our daily conversations. Dah makan? Have you eaten? Have you tried the new eatery? And so on. But there's another subject of food that we don't talk about as often. Where does our food come from? 3 billion people can't afford a healthy diet. Food wastages, environmental impact, and so on. We start the discussion today in hope that we can spark further conversation about food. About 10 years ago, a group of us were looking into reclaiming undefined spaces around Berlin Ringbahn. It is a 150-year-old infrastructure that circles the city. At that time, Berlin, or Germany in fact, had one of the highest demand for sustainable food. Just like any other city, food travels in from miles away. We thought, what if we can use the Ringbahn as a green circuit in order for growing and distributing food, as it already transports more than 500,000 people each day. We started by identifying plots of land that were idle and existing infrastructure around the 37-kilometer rail line. Many parts of the rail were actually broken or damaged because during the war it was destroyed, but only recently reconnected in 2006. We also found that it is a well-connected to Berlin's largest inland port in Westhafen station. And in the south, actually it also can connect easily to Tempelhof Airport, where it was used during the war, but now it is actually also inoperative at the moment. So this urban property of good water, good air, and rail, or land connection in that sense, could become a starting point to support food systems. Back home, noticeably in Klang Valley, we found that it had a similar potential. It is apparent here in the blue ring that you can see on screen that sort of an agricultural network also exists all around us. This network of agricultural land is currently heavily utilized as residential suburbs, and over the years, ownership issues plague the lands. Exceptional circumstances and especially unresolved inheritances become the main obstacle for the land to be developed. For many decades, these pieces of land remain in a state of limbo. They are oftentimes isolated in remote locations, often with little or no infrastructure, thus forming a unique urban disconnect around the city fringe. This urban exercise, in a way, aimed to reimagine the potential of forming a new typology of urban fabric that can, in a way, open possibilities to rethink a new breed of housing that can coexist in the midst of agricultural land. Here you can see a hyperbolic vision of that idea. We thought of exaggerating the provision of our land code by allowing dwellings to be erected if it does not exceed 1/5 of that agricultural plot size. We foresee the introduction of stratified agricultural land to be possible in the future. As the density of agricultural land multiplies, in a way, in that sense, more housing can be built abiding to that 1/5 ratio between housing and agriculture. All stakeholders, including residents who live there, can claim direct ownership through proportional sharing. This could, in a way, be a sort of a small solution for land inheritance matters. This arrangement will provide also more housing for urban dwellers to fend the living as a modern-day farmer. Truthfully, we have a newfound respect for the men and women who grow our food. They are the ones responsible for the good food you see here on screen. Food defines our unity, our culture, and our identity as a Malaysian. The local food here that you can see on screen are some of the well ingredients that you use probably on a daily basis or in all of your favorite meals. But in fact, actually, these ingredients are not even local. Every year, our country does produce more food for export and also for consumption, but it's still in very high deficit where it needs to import billions of dollars of food every year. Malaysia actually only produces 70% of its own food, while the balance is imported from all around the world. Besides food security, the carbon footprint we leave behind is concerning as a result of the huge distance food has to travel. Food miles is a definition for the distance of the food that has traveled before it reaches your plate. This carbon footprint also includes storage and refrigeration. These two are a big culprit to our greenhouse gases.
Hence, during the prolonged MCO, we think about how can we empower some of our domestic spaces to help and become a self-sufficient home state. This idea is not particularly new. Other architects in the past have explored this idea through Garden City, Broadacre City, and a bit more recent, the OMA's Countryside Report. The idea of farming really relates heavily on the available technologies, and we think we are at the brink of the farming revolution 4.0, which is sort of like a post-big corporation farming activities. The idea was to imagine a plot of orchard, for example, that managed itself, and the only thing to do is really to pick up the produce. A shed, a farming shed that can be dropped in your backyard and live among the farmlands, just like our forefathers has. The idea of looking at rural areas as the solution is really because they have the best potential of creating a closed-loop ecosystem. If you look at the fauna and flora that is part of farming activities, we're able to ensure that we retain the nutrient cycle within a closed loop with 3 sheds, which is a compost house, at least an orchard or vegetation farm. And for the faunas, the proteins can be supplied by poultry, fish, and of course, to whom a bit more daring, even insects. But these insects also play a role as active pollinators that help the flora to flourish as well. The idea was really to create a house that is 3D printed, that you can actually have it anywhere. And then basically you are living on top, behind, bottom, side by side of your farmlands. And you can see a multitude of array of other sheds, like poultry sheds and of course fishery shed. It is defined by its circular shape because it is within the arm length of a 3D printer. And then basically it could almost live as an off-grid residential unit. So the idea was really to create a wholesome, self-sustaining, that to a certain extent reduce the amount of carbon foot mile and get the food closer to your plate.
You must be asking, why do we need to start a farmhouse, or why do we have to live in one? Don't we have enough land? Why can't we just farm more? Let's look at that possibility. The biggest misconception actually is that we have still enough arable land to farm. But Malaysia actually is already on the brink of maximizing its land, arable land. We are just 4% shy of that maximum amount. This data also ensures that we have very little room to troubleshoot our issues in regards to food security, food deficit, and the irreversible impact on our environment. A decade ago, each Malaysian was blessed with enough land to sustain his or her food needs. It is suggested actually that 1 acre is the minimal land area required to sustain a person's food need based on our calorie intake. Unfortunately, soon we will be only left with less than half of that area. It is obvious we have a spatial problem that needs a solution. Hence, that is why we investigate various farming typologies or farming systems. Here you can see on screen that even farming beds have its own ratios. So we have investigated that. And from our discovery, we can greatly improve farming yield by implementing precision farming techniques, where a plant is only given just enough water and light to grow, thus minimizing wastage and crop loss that would be lost to pests or bad weather. We put them together in one integrated complex to demonstrate the possibility of having this multiple rack system. But next would be challenging, where we have to identify and closely investigate suitable farming crop that we often use in our daily lives. We have established a certain planting metrics in order to classify and prescribe suitable farming methods to help reduce water usage. Agriculture sector takes up 76% of all available water. This also includes raising and feeding livestock. Thus, looking at our water management is crucial so that we won't have more severe water disruptions in the future. In agriculture alone, almost half of the water that is used is wasted. Our very first attempt to farm in the sky discusses the idea of having a super screen or sort of a green screen. And it could be very possible to be used in existing buildings and also abandoned structures. Since we live in a tropical climate, the screen could also act or host farming beds on the facade while reducing the thermal transfer into buildings. Hopefully, stratified farming will one day repair ecosystems that have been sacrificed for horizontal farming all these decades.
Our second attempt was really on the other side of the straits. We look at an ambitious state of Sarawak that is in dire need to be a net importer of food by 2030. And basically they have made some inroads, but definitely it's an uphill battle, as current food production in Sarawak is fairly minimal, and majority or predominantly the agriculture land predominantly being utilized for industrial crops. It is also apparent that they have a higher national average of food deficit. The idea was really to create something very boxy, efficient, not sexy at all. We tried to plot this all across the town or even the state if you can. It is a huge, or you can say greenhouse on steroids, leveraging on the latest technologies, automations that allow the farm yield to be optimized with the usage of minimal resources and also labor. And it is also have to be well connected to the public to appreciate and learn about food. The idea was really to allow people to go into this informal space of a market, which everybody are welcome, and then they are flanked by a huge pink staircase that penetrate 3-story high. They allow them to informally be invited up to explore the building. The building as a whole really is a celebration of food. As you manage to go up, you will be greeted by Future Food Museum and an additional marketplace as well. At the back, we have formal learning, sort of like a culinary academy at the back, to complement the informal learning you're going to get from the Future Food Museum. As we go up, we provide some space for food-based SMEs in the form of a cloud kitchen, and also production of cellular meat and plant-based meat. So there will be at least 2 floors of creating this artificial meat. Of course, protein alternatives such as mushroom, with high-value gourmet mushroom. It is planted here as well by high-quality mycelium. And as we go up, we can see that the farms fill up with self-pollinating citrus. And actually, you can appreciate the farm from the view inside. The farm really is a collaboration between man and machine. Man going to supervise an army of automated droids that have different functions, that are fitted with different equipment to work on the farm. Because farm, even though it's vertical or even though it's modern, labor is still one of the biggest component of cost. The idea was really to allow the farm to be handled by a hive mind that control an army of droids that work within the farm without any casualties, without any delays, and they can run 24 hours. The idea was really to create a dedicated lift core for the droid, and of course we have those typical green leaf that has a potential of a large array according to the orders. And also we're going to have connections with hospitality players and also healthcare players as supporting stakeholders in order to be subscribed to the responsibly farm produce. And on top, we have this drone pod to get those produce in minutes to those customers. The drone pod is really a reduction of a dependency of vehicular on the road. We try to make sure that they are efficient, they are on the highest floor, and basically people can appreciate the operation of the drone pod by looking through the glass window of this Future Food Museum, where the locals, and especially the kids, it is the advocacy component of the project, can learn about how food been produced, distributed, and how can they benefit in the future, and also how can they make it better in the future. It is really, again, automated to a certain extent. And of course, we have men to work along machines to troubleshoot if there is any problem. So the project is really a complete 360 appreciation of food. Okay, not only education, knowledge sharing, and of course, food production. We have designed Future Food Museum as a tower within a tower. So it is a vertical museum that you actually start from the top and goes downward. It is filled with interactive exhibitions, installation with regards of food. It is sort of designed as a second sort of aquarium that you are cutting through multiple vertical farm as you go down the museum. As you appreciate the information that is in the particular museum, you're also inside the working farm. And of course, we have those friendly droids that you can ask your question away if you want, and basically try to keep the museum to work and operate autonomously as well. So at the end of the day, even though we have a huge global supply chain of food coming from all over the globe, we try to make the farm as efficient as possible, and at least it has a certain amount of efficiency of 68,000 percentile of a typical farmlands. Okay, if you compare to a similar size area that the building occupy. And hopefully we can somehow make the ecosystem or the food distribution become slightly more simpler.
The problem does not stop there. As we have looked into food production, another choke point is food distribution. We can't argue that good food, fresh food, and slightly more affordable food are found from markets. As we look closer at these markets, we realize that they are indeed logistical buildings. Here are several markets that we have gone to and studied further. One of the largest logistical and consumer-centric buildings are airports. Airport manage passengers and their cargo. Basically, when you arrive at an airport, you are separated from your cargo or from your baggage. You are separated also during flights and during connecting flights. And upon arrival, you are accurately matched back together. There's a lesson to be learned from this logistical model of a daily wet market. Large volumes of produce arriving in short periods of time need to be sorted through individual stalls. It is also a concentration and dispersion model, just like airports. The consumers are matched to a custom selection of produce. In this sense, it's their shopping lists. Hence, the need to devise a multi-distribution channel, as everyone has their own dietary preferences, own lifestyles, they buy in varying quantities. So this is to ensure effectiveness of the market operation and customer satisfactions are still relevant or still met. But nevertheless, we ask the wisdom of the people to let us know what they think a future market will be. These are stall owners or people who also frequent market on a weekly basis. So through a series of urban engagement exercises, they, in a way, help us to produce alternative farming layouts for our market. So we're happy to have their input on this.
Hence, from that engagement, we think that we need to design a market as an open platform that allow future softwares, future programs to be adopted into old or existing hardwares. So the idea was really to include a bit more than just selling and trading. There is also a festivity component to it. And at the end of the day, we decided to put the market on the second floor due to the fact that we want to ensure that it is not exposed to any flash flood. But it is seamless. From the grade, you can just go up to the market floor with a step plaza. So without you knowing, eventually you are already there. And at the back, we have designed sort of like an enclosed logistical core. The idea was really to allow people to trade in bulk, okay, B2B, business to business engagement, trading, to happen within an enclosed area so that you will not be on the peripheral of the market, usually disrupting traffic. The idea was to really to create a humongous volume, a modern wholesale market down there, and then allow people to be on schedule on a certain logistical plan. So there will be, mimicking again an airport. There will be called at a certain time. There will be, a period where they can unload or load their things. And then basically there will be will be handled by a market operator team. So the vendors are really just have to wait upstairs in their stalls. So the idea also, we want to ensure that the creation of continuous circulation are fairly seamless. From our study, we have noticed that a lot of markets have secondary and tertiary lanes. Basically a path that less frequent by patrons, and we want to create a fair trade market where each part of the market is the primary circulations. So with that in mind, there is also a moralistic component to allow all traders to get even opportunities. The market floor itself really designed to feature a 5-lane traffic lay-by that you can get to from the grade. So you can go up and then basically greeted by these 5 lanes, again, inspired by an airport departure and arrival drop-off area. You can get your e-hailing services, you can be dropped off, you can be picked up from here, even drive-through services could be implemented here in the future. We have a logistical island in the middle that can get you through from the top or the bottom. It is fairly simple. You just go up from the grade, and then suddenly you are already there on the market floor on the second floor, even though it is elevated, but it is seamlessly connected. The idea was really to create a possibility of programs. Again, the road can be closed for additional market vendors to come in, food truck, vendors on motorcycle, etc., or can be operated as a lay-by. And as we go into the market, we are really fronted by an array of alleys, boulevard that is mimicking a small city. The market is really been arranged in a form of a small town, a microcosm of in this particular case, a neighborhood of Jelutong. And the market produce are housed in individual sheds that are intimate in size, and then they are designed to that particular produce. So some has thicker insulation, some has better ventilation, some has different cleaning filters, drain size, and whatnot. So the idea was really to create that intimate feeling, even though the market has now enlarged multifold time from its original size, and at the same time democratically allow people to have their own shopping experience. Sometimes in other markets, you kind of need to go through something that you don't actually need to get to somewhere. For example, seafood, you have to go through vegetables. It also respects the choice of lifestyle and dietary restriction of the potential patrons. So if you are a vegan and you don't want to go through animal produce shed, you can just skip through it. So it is designed to separate the plant-based produce with animal-based produce. In between those sheds, we have slotted few communal facilities, community hall, and also plaza is one of the main feature of this particular facilities. In this particular neighborhood of Jelutong is fairly valuable. Green spaces, open spaces are very limited. The plaza is being designed as a wild card. Again, if you have additional program that is not part of the core program, you can have it during off season or off hour. For example, a rave music festival in this particular case, and somehow at night the building, the produce shed, had become sort of like a beautiful townscape background for this particular music festival. And as we look at this whole small city, of market city as a whole, we want to ensure it induces a certain characteristic that is a bit more friendly, a bit more colorful, and a little bit more, inclusive. The idea was really to create a place where people of Jelutong can actually enjoy, beyond just trading or having a meal. Yeah, at the end of the day, we hope that this will be a nice addition to that particular neighborhood.
As we zoom out from Jelutong, we look at a view of Penang itself. This is an area coined as Penang Bay. It has a unique position flanked by two landmasses, Butterworth and Georgetown on the island. It is fronted by two green zones, a recreational spine and an agricultural belt on the northern peninsula. We look at it as a petri dish, and we ask ourselves what Penang Bay needs. And with that, we also question how can we improve food quality, accessibility, food security in this region. We have introduced 8 interventions, and the idea of having food production in the city is something we cannot miss.
We start with a vacant land flanked by Prai River. The idea was really to upscale our previous understanding and our previous attempt in a smaller scale from a house to a vertical farm into a regional master plan. So we have included an array of vertical farms that, again, produce different type of food and have those supporting elements in order to make it a successful project. So the idea was really to bring everything in one, including transmission of knowledge that preserve the legacies, and of course the originality of those world-renowned Penang cuisine, and of course supporting startup as well. On this particular campus, it is really all about high technology management of that particular farm, and of course looking forward in the future, we have to continuously invest in producing better crop seed, and of course technological advances in terms of farming management to improve our overall yield. A special area dedicated to protein, because protein has a heavy carbon tax on them. So we have designed a sort of a industrial district to produce plant-based meat, again, cellular meat, and of course, mushroom, as they are one of these fastest growing proteins. And of course, we have designed them to include it into mainstream product like burgers, hot dog, etc. At the end of the day, maritime produce landing jetty are also taken into one step further to reduce the amount of waste of the hard-working fishermen that actually go to the sea and actually catch those produce. But food is not as simple as that. We kind of need to work on the general ecological food cycle. So an effort to restore mangrove forests along Prairie River are also one of the efforts in order to bolster food production as a whole naturally outside the building. Of course, this effort is continuous throughout the Prairie River. As we go out, we follow the river towards the straits. And in this particular place where it is, one of the main landmarks was Penang Central, we also include a number of recreational activities in this particular mangrove rehabilitation program in order to support the mangrove restoration efforts. In this particular case, it is a bit more filled up with a bit more recreational activities as it is closer to residential areas. But to man those farms, we also need vocational training, and this is a vocational training institute that is converted from a smelting plant in that particular area. At the same time, continuous R&D and of course investment in food-based SMEs that employ single mothers to improve women empowerment, and we have to support social enterprise based on food. This will be a dedicated campus with regards to that. And an array of residential options, dwelling units with different type of schemes and of course size and type to accommodate people that are actually going to be live and working in this particular area. Connection is also very important, integrating multiple mode of transportation, hopefully the future Skycap, and of course the old KTM station will be a bit more integrated in the future. And of course the drone port, a full-blown building dedicated for short distance transportation and distribution. As you take a ferry, hopefully, to the other side of the town, and you are going across Penang Bay, you're going to reach the neighborhood of McCallum. This particular neighborhood is not that visible due to the fact that it is filled with mainly social housing and medium-low income demographic. But what we're trying to do is really to put it on the front face of this particular proposal by reallocating the ferry from the gazetted UNESCO area to this particular area to divert some of the unnecessary commuters traffic that going through the UNESCO gazetted area. And with that, we also bring in all those regulatory bodies, HQ here as well. At the same time, this project will spill over to the public, to the locals by having more recreational activities. The idea was really to increase mobility as food access, highly reliant on economical capacity. So to build that economic and social capacity, we have to ensure that they have good connections to find good jobs, and then basically social capacity to thrive within that particular neighborhood. And of course, multi-array of new public spaces across the bay, sort of flanking the water body. And then basically, we have to think about the neighborhood as a whole, as a regeneration that includes additional parks, additional open space, and of course, supportive ventures for the landing jetty for fishermen up there. Jelutong landfill is actually a landfill for construction waste. and it has been building up from over the years. In order to impact more families, to have more families have access to good food, we need to bring in high-value jobs. And to do that, we have designed a dedicated campus to actually allow high-value creation of jobs that require, that will supply knowledge workers, basically opportunity to showcase their talent. The green belt is really connecting to the neighborhood of Jelutong, and we want to at least think about how can we expand their innovations through our exposition. And of course, at the end of the day, we want to match them with venture capitalists to ensure that to a point where we can get 1 or 2 unicorns coming from this particular district. And we are not forgetting the innovation and creative component of our talented youth, basically trying to bring them into an incubator hub that dedicated for film, dance, arts, music, and all those soft industry. And with the connection, hopefully, from the other side of the new rail and of course SkyCap, we have designed like a transit-oriented development for their housing, for the housing component, so they can live, work, and thrive in this particular area. As a whole, if you look at all the plans, they are colored in chai-like or Lego-like colors. There's a reason for that. We really want to invite as much as stakeholders as possible to come in and thrash out the plans and giving us valuable inputs and trying to be objective oriented and try to think about what is best for that particular area. And of course, this is the underlying ethos of the particular studio. We want to ensure that we always engage with people, and of course, during the MCO it's a bit challenging. So we're looking forward into looking at how we can do this digitally, maybe in the new realm of digital metaverse in the near future. But we want to express the act of play and empowering people to do architecture, empowering people to participate by not making overly complicated material. We love to work on games like this, where people in JB, for example, can really recreate their own master plan within 12 minutes with these perspective tiles of park component. Eventually, they can create a better alternative, as they were locals there, than us. So we are happy to provide them tools, guidance, and try to be as collaborative as possible. And we hope this is a food for thought for everyone, and somehow be with us and try to work with a lot of all these stakeholders in our continuous quest to find good food. Thank you.